Well, good morning, ABC 15 Facebook friends. I am so glad that you are joining us this morning for a very powerful discussion on an epidemic that is facing our community and affecting our kids. I am talking specifically about the fentanyl epidemic. It's an epidemic of unheard of proportions. I have talked to so many people over the last several months, law enforcement, healthcare providers, caregivers, parents. Everyone has told me the same thing. This is an epidemic of unheard of proportions. They have never seen it this bad. I'm telling you guys, this is bad. According to the DEA, I want you to hear this. The Drug Enforcement Administration says that pills laced with fentanyl are making their way into our country by the millions. Just this year, DEA has seized over 9.5 million pills laced with fentanyl. That's killing our kids. Here's what's so scary, is that you don't know if that pill is laced with fentanyl. Our kids are finding them on the streets. They're getting them online. They're going through social media platforms. I've heard one child say it's as easy as ordering a pizza. We have to stop this. This is happening to our communities and to our kids. And here's the scary part. You can't tell the difference between the real one and the fake one. You don't know if a pill is laced with fentanyl until it is too late. Now, you may have just had the chance to see our Sonoran Living special. We just did a whole half hour on this topic, and I am so grateful that we get to carry on this conversation this morning live on Facebook with many of the people that Susan and I had a chance to interview. Now, this is Facebook, and we encourage you to participate. We want you to participate. If you have a legitimate question for our professionals, I want you to ask it. I'm going to try and get to those questions. I really am. But we don't have a lot of time, right? So if you have a question, I can't get to it, I want you to know that reach out. There's help out there. There is a community out there that wants to help you get the answers that you need and stop this epidemic. All right, first up, I want to introduce you to a man who knows all too well what addiction is and what it can lead to.
Somebody to this epidemic, please do me a favor and stand up. About half the building is standing up. There's over 5,000 kids here and half the building is standing up. Last year, we lost over 70,000 Americans to overdose death. When I say 70,000, a huge portion of that are kids high school age.
Jim Wahlberg, he is the executive director of the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation. He's here with us live on Facebook right now to shed more light on this topic that you are truly so passionate about. First of all, Jim, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being part of this discussion. It's a critical topic. It's one that we're not talking enough about across our country. And something that's interesting about that piece that you just showed, there's a little piece of it missing, right? So the question that I posed to the audience was, how many people here have lost somebody they love to an overdose? Okay. Yeah. Half the audience stood up, and that was a small number. To some of the places I've been, it's been more like 75 to 80% of the audience. And we're talking about junior high school and high school kids. Now, to put that into context for you, I grew up in the streets of Boston. When I say I grew up in the streets, I mean I grew up literally in the streets. I was homeless and fully addicted by the time I was 12 years old. I've been to juvenile detention and all the way to maximum security state prison. I never knew of anybody dying from an overdose until I was in maximum security state prison. Okay? Yeah. Compare that to 85% or even half of that audience knowing somebody personally that they love that they lost to an overdose. That is devastating to a young person.
Life-changing. And not to mention the parents that are out there that are dealing with this. And we are trying to figure it all out, Jim. And I know you have kids. We're trying to do the best we can along the way. You grew up on the streets, but let's be real. These kids who are dying, they come from all types of backgrounds, right? They're not living on the street kids. They're not rich kids. They're everybody. This drug knows no boundaries.
It's interesting. When I was a kid, I started sort of the way, I don't know if it's a more traditional or more sort of normal way, if there's a normal way to fall into addiction or to become addicted, right? I started with alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and progressed into more dangerous drugs. Kids today are starting with the most dangerous drugs known to man. It's never been more true ever in our history when somebody says to you, just one time could kill you. That's never been more true. When people said that to me when I was a kid, I blew them off and I didn't believe them. And maybe it wasn't as true. It's certainly more true today than ever before. And when you talked about fentanyl and you talked about counterfeit pills, 90% of the pills bought out there illegally today are counterfeit. I was watching a documentary yesterday and a guy held up a vial of heroin and said, this is how much it would take to kill me in heroin. And this is fentanyl. It was one granula of sand. And he said it could kill both of us.
Your connection's dipping out on me just a little bit, but I want to give our viewers some perspective here, because see, this is the pencil, right? The tip of this pencil, a grain of fentanyl on the tip of this pencil will kill you. And you don't know it's in that pill because they all look the same. They look the same. They are coming in by the millions. We have to stop it right now. Jim, I appreciate you being here. Please stick with us. I want to bring in some more of our panel this morning, because we want to empower our community out there. And I hope you share this feed with other people, because this could change their lives. This could save their lives. I want to continue this discussion. The Drug Enforcement Administration, of course known as the DEA, is taking to the streets, the cities, our towns, to helping educate and prevent these drug threats. They created Operation Engage. That was a special that you just saw. So joining us this morning is Special Agent in charge of the Phoenix Field Division, Sherry Oz, is joining us this morning. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us. Also joining us is Leslie Horton. She is the director of the Yavapai County Community Health Services. We're going to talk about what fentanyl does to our bodies and why it's so addicting, and opioids are such an addiction, and how you can get some help. Also joining us is Marilee Fowler. She is the executive director of MapForce and Community Counts. It's a nonprofit organization, and this organization is helping to educate not only the kids, but parents as well, and what to look for. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I want our viewers to please stick with us. Let's give you some information. I want to start with you, Special Agent Oz. Where are these pills coming from?
Isn't that a great question? And I'm going to tell you honestly, they're all coming from Mexico. 90% of the drugs that come into the United States come through the southwest border, and they go right here through Arizona and to the rest of the country. They're being made in super labs, and the precursors for these synthetic drugs are coming directly from China, from India. And the quantity, in case you're wondering, we have no idea. They keep making them.
That is scary. That is frightening. And I said earlier in the introduction to this special that we're doing that it is so easy for kids. They can order it online. These pills are getting delivered to them. That's bad. But Sherry, is it really that bad, or is it worse?
It is worse than I could ever express to you. It is terrifying as a special agent, as a mom, as somebody who lives in this community. This epidemic is everywhere. It is in your schools right now. It is in your neighborhood right now.
Right. It might be in your house right now, and you don't even know it, because that is the scary part, is that they're manufacturing these pills to look exactly like the real deal. Marilee, you have said to me before, what we need to instill in our kids is that if you were not prescribed that medication, if you did not get that medication from a doctor, from a pharmacist, don't take it.
Exactly. There's no caregivers and people that simply just care about kids to have these conversations. And I just want to mention too that often this fentanyl is mixed in other drugs. We have an overdose fatality review board, and talking to families who have lost their teenagers is just devastating. But what's also happening, it's being mixed in other drugs. We had a 22-year-old that thought she was just snorting cocaine one evening and didn't wake up the next day because it was laced with fentanyl. So conversations are so important, and we all need to talk to children about these dangers.
I think that the whole term fentanyl is still very new, and I as much as we all have heard it, But I think for parents out there who are hearing it now, it's like, okay, come on, no. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is killing our kids. It's one pill. One pill can kill. I've actually talked to parents who have lost a child, and the child, their son, who's perfectly normal, fine, seems to be, good night, mom, doesn't wake up the next morning. This is a tragedy, and this is what we're trying to prevent right now by education. Jim, I know you've had a chance to talk to a lot of parents who've lost kids. What message can you give parents right now to prevent this from happening?
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, I know probably 1,000 families across the country personally now that have lost children. And, I've made a number of films on the subject of addiction, and particularly the opioid addiction crisis. And I've never shown my film, if only, without a parent there that has lost a child to share their experience, because you don't get it. You don't understand it. It's too much to comprehend. That child is gone. They're never going to be at that table again. They're not going to graduate from high school. They're not going to get married. They're not going to graduate from college. They're not going to join the army. They're not going to do anything. They're gone. And these parents are completely devastated. And every one of them, always ask the same question. And they've all, conveyed this to me. Where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? They're blaming themselves when ultimately, what we just heard about how easy it is to get their hands on these drugs and how much information these young people are getting that is counter to what families are teaching them. But there's nothing more important than having a conversation with your children about the dangers of these drugs and just the things that we're talking about right here, right? Every kid should hear the information that we're providing them with right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, which is why I said, please share this. If it doesn't affect you, which chances are it does, everybody knows somebody. It's kind of like cancer. It's the cancer. Everybody knows somebody who's addicted or afflicted. It's such a tragedy, and we have to figure out how to, first of all, stop them from coming in. And we'll go back to Agent Oz in just a second. But Leslie, I want to ask you something. The problem is opioids. The kids are and young adults as well are looking to get high off of a Percocet or a Xanax, or that herein is a problem all by itself. Whether they're laced with fentanyl or not, we know that's a tragedy. But opioid addiction is a huge problem, and you see it all the time.
Absolutely, and addiction is something that people have a really hard time shaking off, and now they're calling it a disease because truly, when someone starts dabbling, especially at a young age, in something like opioids, or even if it's other drugs that aren't as severe as, say, fentanyl, but they start at a young age, it actually rewires their brain to start seeking that drug. And so it just makes it so hard to, even identify when that addiction starts, or to really realize when help is needed and when intervention is needed. But that's where, especially with our youth, it's so important for those parents to know what their kids are doing, who their kids are hanging out with, and watch for those red flags that might, signal a need to intervene and to find out what they're doing.
Well, let's talk about some of those red flags. What are they? What should parents be looking for? Is there a symptom? Is there a sign? Are there apps, or is there something on their phone? I mean, what is it that we should be looking for?
Definitely look online and find out what those apps are that are secretive, that you can, find things and then erase your history, those kind of things that are there on your kids' phones, and you should know about them and be that parent that asks for the phone and go through it, even if you've got to go through it with the kid. It's very important. Myself as a parent, I'm always watching what they're doing, making sure I know what's on there. But there's other red flags, like changes in their work at school. So making sure that they're keeping up with the schoolwork, also noticing what their friends are into, what they're looking at more online, if they're on Instagram and some of these other Facebook or anything else that they're on, that you're kind of watching what they're into, but also changes in their overall behavior, sleeping more, sleeping less, There's a lot of things, but those changes in behavior are something that should really trigger a parent to say, whoa, hold on, what's causing this change? Is it something simple like hormones or something else, or is it something that they really need to take note of and get in the middle of really quickly before there is a major problem or fentanyl enters the scene?
Well, and here's the deal, we're all parents. You know how that conversation is going to go, right? The second you address it, there's, deny. Special Agent Oz, if we suspect that there is someone in our child's life that may be providing this deadly drug, what do we do?
Those people are predators and they're preying on your children, and you need to treat them like predators. And you cannot be afraid to make that phone call. Your kids, my kids, the studies show that they still care what we think. It's okay to tell your kids drugs are bad. In fact, we should be saying that. They're bad. Don't use them. If you have a predator in your child's life, call the police. Get some help. Let us help you get justice.
Yeah, well, because that is the only way, is speaking up as a community that we're going to be able to make this kind of change. I mean, you really are saving lives, and if you can't do it for maybe a loved one that you lost, do it for somebody else. Reaching out and saying something is extremely important. Marilee, we talked a little bit about talking to your kids, and studies do show that parents who talk to their children about drugs are 50% less likely to use. You actually offer a platform and a forum to help parents start that conversation.
Absolutely. We developed a website, and it's talknowaz.com, and parents can go to that website, and we will, there's resources on how to start the conversation. And I just want to emphasize again that don't be worried about what am I going to say. Like as Special Agent Oz mentioned, kids care about their parents' disapproval. And we just need to start the conversation, but there are resources on that website, how to be age appropriate, how to have open-ended questions to get them talking. And it's really just teaching them the risks and harms of these drugs, because our children are smart and they need to realize the significant risk that they are taking by sticking that pill in their mouth. And they're going to make wise choices if they just have the information and know that their parents care about what's happening with them. So go to Talk Now AZ and find more information on how to have successful conversations.
And, talking with other parents too can be extremely helpful. If you've been down that road at all, you know what you're in for, and talking to others is very, very helpful. Jim, I'm just wondering, I know it's been tough for you to go out into the schools lately because of COVID, but I know young kids feel comfortable talking to you. What are they saying? What are they asking you? What are some of their concerns?
Well, I wanna first just say real quickly that we look at children, and like I go and when I was able to go to schools, I was in a school in New Mexico, and I spoke and did our presentation, showed our film, and afterwards there was a little, it was a line of kids that wanted to, say hi or meet me or whatever, or talk about their own concerns, and there was one guy that caught my eye, and he was like, he was the kid I wished I was, at least visually, when I was in school. He had a team basketball jersey on and a jacket on. He was handsome. He beautiful. He had hair, which I don't have. I mean, he just looked like he had it all together. And as he got closer and closer to me, his facial expression got more and more serious. And by the time he got to me, he just hugged me, and he was crying, and he was talking to me in my ear, and he was telling me about his family and how his brother was thrown out of the house, and that he doesn't see his brother anymore, and that his family has been devastated by this thing. And he was just so broken into pieces. Listen, this thing has crossed every boundary. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, how much money you got, what neighborhood you're from, what religion you are, what your nationality is. We need to talk. We need to communicate. We need to have this discussion with our kids. They are so broken by so many things. We were talking just now about having this conversation and about with our kids. Think about this. Think about the conversations you had with your children as they related to COVID, right?
Wow.
And precautions and being careful and wearing a mask and washing your hands and doing all these things, right? We need to have that conversation, that same sort of desperate and drastic and serious conversation with our children about these opioids and drugs in general, right? We need to get educated like we did about COVID and learning all we can and reading everything we can and having that type of a serious conversation with our young people.
Spot on. I couldn't agree more, and I think our entire panel does. I think everybody watching now, it's just you have to start the process. And as Marilee said, not to be afraid, but do make it age appropriate. And it's okay. It's okay to have that conversation. It's okay to be honest with your kids. It's okay to tell them what you don't like. I mean, come on. We tell them every other reason that we don't like of things that we do. Why not this? Why not take the extra time to do it? And don't not do it because you're afraid, mom and dad. Because what Jim just said about breaking families, think about the other members of the family. Everyone is affected across the board. It affects the other kids too. As a matter of fact, you know, Jim, you came from a huge family. I'm surprised that somebody in your family didn't pull you by the back of the shirt and said, "What the heck? What are you doing?" Did nobody talk to you?
They tried. Yeah, they tried, and you know, it was as it progressed, as my addiction progressed and my difficulties progressed, I was further and further out of reach for them. Right. In the beginning, it was, you know, it was trying to have a conversation and trying to educate me. And then, you know, the yelling and screaming. And we went through every phase that you can go through. But I was so dug in and I was so lost that at a certain point, I was really unreachable. Right. And I needed to go through all that I had to go through to be sort of beaten into a state of reasonableness, if you will. Right. That I couldn't continue to live like this. I was doing 6 to 9 years in state prison. And I knew, the only thing I knew is I didn't want to do 9 years, because if I did 9 years, I'd be over 30 when I get out. So I started to do some things to create an illusion, right? That I was trying to get better, right? And ultimately that the thought got into my mind that just maybe I could change some things about myself and try to live my life a different way. But it's a long shot. By that point, it's a long shot, right? We need to get to them long before they're having these difficulties. I had these difficulties in my own home with my own child, you know, and my son grew up with a dad in recovery and a dad that didn't serve alcohol. And he'd never seen me under the influence of any mind-altering drug. And it came time, and he learned, and he heard his whole life about the dangers and the difficulties. But it came to a point in his life where he thought he was different, right? And you know, here's the thing. This is the way I look at addiction is, you know, you tell a kid, don't stick your hand over the stove. You're going to burn yourself, right? And a kid that's wired like me, they stick their hand over the stove and it burns them. And they go, ow. And then they take their other hand and stick it over the stove too, right? Just to be sure. Right. My son had all this information and the wealth of my experience and my knowledge and my work in the field, but he still had to put his hand over that stove. Right. And, you know, we talked about the signs and the symptoms. Right. So a lot of the signs and the symptoms that we talk about normally and naturally are now the normal for kids. Right. They're being isolated. They're being taken away from their friends. They're, you know, a lot of kids are still not back in the classroom, right? Their whole lives have changed and they're isolated. And so they're looking for a fix to that isolation and that depression. And for there's something about a pill, right? There's something about a pill that seems less dangerous than when you say to a kid doing heroin, right? That's like, what? Right? That's like the worst drug known to man, right? Somehow it's you know, that somehow we still think that a pill is safer, right? And that's how we got into this problem in the first place, right? Well, because the doctors told us they were safe and that they were non-addictive, and they end up killing hundreds of thousands of people.
Exactly. And that herein is the problem right there. It's the fact that you want to take that pill to begin with. And now these pills are being laced with a deadly drug on top of it. So, you bring up a good point too, Jim, and I want to ask Leslie this because when we, as parents or as having a loved one who's an addict, we bang our heads against the wall, trying to help, trying to do whatever we can say, whatever we can show them and guide them. But the reality of it is that until that person is ready to get some help, it's frustrating. What can we do, Leslie? What can we do? How can we help them? And if we can't, right? If they're not ready, is that right?
They really do have to be ready. And in some circumstances, what I see families do is, they protect their children, and that's our natural behavior, is to protect our children. But sometimes, they do have to see harsh consequences to substance use and to utilizing drugs, because it helps them to understand that there's a need for change. Sometimes, though, that is sadly in the loss of a friend or a loved one that is in their inner circle that has that realization that there needs to be change. But, that person themselves, especially at the point where they are considered addicted or that it's become an ongoing drug-seeking habit, that they really do need to find their own motivation to change. But families can definitely help in that way. And especially if there's siblings and parents that can help work on setting goals and finding ways to find that their loved one some new friends that have healthier behaviors, and just looking at redirecting their energy towards things that are healthful and give them a reason to progress and a reason to change. Because really deep down, people will not recover unless it's their idea and it's their motivation. And so as much as we want to help them, it truly has to come from inside that person.
Yeah, you never know what one thing you say will change their way of thinking or their beliefs. You never know. And I just want to say to other parents out there, just never give up. Never give up. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. These are people that you love. And that one thing that you say, that one video that you send them, that one person that they talk to, that one event that they go to and meet somebody like Jim Wahlberg, that might make the difference. That may make all the difference. So we're almost out of time, but Special Agent Oz, I want to ask you quickly, you guys are working with local law enforcement here. I know this is a huge undertaking. What is it that you would like to tell the community? How can we help you help us?
I'm so glad you asked that. We are trying to become the drug education administration in addition to the enforcement administration. We're trying to get out there with outreach. The more that we can spread the word, one pill can kill. We're at a 42% lethality rate per pill, which is outrageous. Please talk to your kids, talk at barbecues, spread the word. This is a deadly epidemic and there is no one that is immune. I appreciate you guys very much helping me spread that word. If you have identified somebody that is a drug trafficker, please let DEA help you, let your local police help you so that we can keep your community safe.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Leslie, somebody watching right now, I know you're in Yavapai County, but somebody watching right now, and Yavapai County, by the way, is hit particularly hard with this fentanyl epidemic. What would you tell parents of children right now if they may be concerned there's a problem?
Talk to them. One pill can kill, but the most important thing parents can do is let their children know that they'll not get mad if they can talk to them. They'll, make sure that the kids feel open, that, they can have open and honest conversations, but just talk to them about everything, their friends, what's going on at school, everything. And once in a while, that conversation is, becomes safe enough for them to turn to the things that are more difficult to talk about. And that's the most important piece of advice I can give is talk to them and know what they're doing.
Absolutely. And then, Marilee, it really comes down to prevention. And I know that you're working diligently on that's really where it all starts, is just to stop this from happening to begin with. The website, is it mapforceaz.org?
It's mapforce.org.
Mapforce.org. Okay, mapforce.org. You offer up a lot of resources to family, friends, and caregivers. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. We have resources for parents, we have resources for teachers, for students. We're in the schools on a regular basis with substance use education. And can I just say also that something I think that's really important for parents, if you do think that your child is using, seek professional help. We're very fortunate in Arizona to have the 211 system that people can call. There's national hotlines, 1-800-662-HELP. Findtreatment.gov. You as a parent, we need to protect our kids. So, be willing to have those open conversations. Don't overreact if you think that your child is using. Keep that dialogue, but seek professional help and get them the help that they need. We know that treatment works, and we want kids to have those professional resources.
Really good information. Yes, parents, arm yourself with knowledge. Be ready. Be ready if you suspect that they're having an issue. Be ready with information that can help them. Jim, I hope you get back into the schools soon. Is that a possibility? Because this discussion that you have one-on-one with them and given your personal history is very powerful.
Yeah, we hope to be back in the schools. Probably, I don't think it'll be until the next school year. But we hope to be back in the schools, and we hope to be having this conversation with young people again. And, part of what we do is we go to the school, we have the conversation with the young people, and then we do an evening event for the parents, right? So that they can come and they are aware of the topics, what we've talked about, the film that we've shown them, the questions that have been posed to us by the kids, and we try to give them some tools to have this conversation. If they've both seen the film and both taken part in the event, that opens a door. That opens a door to say, hey, what did you learn? And this is what I learned. And I, as a parent, I learned some things. And, that is the goal, is we're just conversation starters. That's it. That's all we're trying to do, is create an opportunity for parents and children to have this very difficult conversation. And once that door is open, then the communication starts, and they start to learn some tools and some tricks in order to have a further and deeper conversation.
Yeah. We really do need to make it easy and arm our parents and our community with knowledge. That's really the key. And I think that's exactly what we've done just now. I appreciate every single one of you. I'm extremely passionate about it myself. I hope that everyone watching, we were able to help someone. I hope they learned something. Please share it with anyone that you're concerned about. This panel right here we want to make a difference, and we want to help our communities, and that's why we're here. Of course, I want to thank all of you, and of course, if you have an emergency, don't hesitate, call 911, but there's all these other resources, specifically if you go to our website, abc15.com/opioids. Thank you to each and every one of you and those Facebook fans who watched.